global music scene, two African pop stars are constantly being placed side by side in conversation: Tyla and Ayra Starr. Now, a disclaimer. This is my personal opinion from years of experience studying creative branding strategy, so I'm not saying it's the truth, but I think there's some sense in what I'll be explaining. So, that being said, let's get into the video. At first glance, the comparison makes sense. They are both young, beautiful, fashion-forward African women making global pop music with sensual undertones and Gen Z appeal. They occupy similar visual spaces online, and at one point, the similarities between them became so noticeable that people genuinely began asking, who is copying who? But after really sitting down and studying both artists, I realized something important. They are actually not similar at all. What looks similar on the surface is completely different underneath. Because Tyla and Ayra Starr are not built from the same emotional structure, the same artistic logic, or even the same type of femininity. And once you understand that, the comparison itself starts to fall apart. To understand why people keep comparing them, it helps to look at how each artist entered the spotlight. Before Tyla's global breakout, Ayra Starr had already established herself within the Nigerian music scene as one of the most promising young voices in Afropop. Ayra emerged with a highly expressive identity. From the beginning, she carried a sense of emotional freedom, youthful rebellion, and experimentation. Her sound, her visuals, and her personality felt fluid and constantly evolving. She did not present herself as overly polished or fully figured out. Instead, she felt like someone discovering herself in real time, and that openness became part of her appeal. Then came Tyla, whose rise followed a very different blueprint. Tyla's breakout was tied heavily to visual identity, global marketability, choreography, and polished sensuality. From the moment she entered mainstream visibility, she already felt positioned. Her image was clear, controlled, and internationally digestible in a way that immediately translated across audiences. Eventually, both artists began occupying the same cultural space. They collaborated, shared overlapping audiences, and existed within the same expanding global Afropop's ecosystem. That overlap is where the public confusion began. The hairstyles looked similar, the styling occasionally overlapped, certain sonic textures existed within the same world. Both were beautiful Gen Z African women operating in central pop spaces with strong visual branding. So, naturally, comparisons intensified. But I think what actually happened had less to do with copying and more to do with industry convergence. Once two artists are repeatedly placed beside each other, subconscious overlap becomes almost inevitable. Trends begin to mirror each other, and audiences start projecting similarities onto both artists, whether those similarities are truly foundational or not. However, once you move beyond aesthetics and examine them more closely, the differences become impossible to ignore. Structurally, they are completely different artists, and that distinction becomes even clearer when you look at how each woman expresses femininity. If Ayra's energy feels exploratory, Tyla's feels intentional from the very beginning. Tyla represents femininity as arrival. There's something very finished about her presence. She does not feel like someone trying to discover herself publicly. Instead, she feels like someone who already understands the image she wants to present. Her energy is controlled. Even her softness feels intentional. At her core, Tyla operates from a lover archetype, layered with queen energy. The lover gives her sensuality, magnetism, rhythm, softness, and emotional attraction. This is what makes her feel feminine in such an effortless way. She does not force sensuality, she embodies it naturally. but the queen layer changes how that femininity is expressed. The queen introduces composure, self-awareness, image control, and emotional restraint. It creates a sense that she is always conscious of how she is being perceived. And this is why Tyla rarely feels emotionally chaotic or overly vulnerable in public. Her femininity is contained and structured. That same structure also shapes her overall brand identity. Her brand archetype is clearly ruler. Everything about her image revolves around polish, luxury, aspiration, visual precision, global positioning, controlled branding. Even casual moments still feel curated. And this is where her biggest strength becomes connected to her biggest weakness. Because when queen energy becomes stronger than lover energy, the softness can sometimes turn sharp. And this is why some people perceive Tyla as aloof, snobby, emotionally distant, awkwardly polarizing in interviews or public moments. And that is not because she's necessarily those things, but because controlled femininity can easily be misread as emotional coldness. Her image is so structured that people notice every small shift in tone or expression. The solution to this is not abandoning her control. It is balance. Tyla becomes strongest when she allows more playfulness, humor, honesty, and warmth into her public persona. Those moments soften the queen structure and allows the lover energy to breathe naturally again. At the same time, there is another layer beneath the polished exterior. Tyla also carries strong maiden elements. The maiden gives her youthful curiosity, flirtation, spontaneity, and lightness. It is the part of her that can feel playful, teasing, carefree, and emotionally open when she allows herself to relax to it. The maiden energy is actually one of her hidden superpowers because it keeps her from feeling too untouchable or overly manufactured. And when she leans into it, people connect to her more naturally. That balance is what keeps her from becoming too rigid or overly polished. Physically, Tyla exists as a diva plus it girl archetype. The diva gives glamour, beauty, authority, and stage command, and the it girl gives trend, relevance, youth appeal, and cultural visibility. Together, they create an artist who feels aspirational, polished, and globally marketable. Tyla is femininity as structure. Where Tyla embodies arrival, Ayra Starr embodies motion. Ayra exists on the opposite emotional spectrum. Where Tyla feels finished, Ayra feels evolving. Ayra does not present herself as a completed identity. She presents herself as someone actively moving through different emotional and artistic phases. One moment she feels soft and romantic, the next she feels rebellious and emotionally expressive, and suddenly she becomes dreamy, introspective, or detached. But this is not inconsistency, it is development. At her core, Ayra operates from a lover plus maiden archetype. The lover gives emotional intensity, sensuality, artistic magnetism, and vulnerability. And the maiden introduces curiosity, experimentation, openness, emotional growth, and the feeling of becoming rather than arriving. This combination makes Ayra feel fluid. She does not stay in one emotional form long enough to become completely fixed in people's minds, and that fluidity is exactly why she often feels like a muse. Not because she is passive, but because she reflects emotion instead of controlling it, and people interpret her differently depending on what phase they encounter her in. That emotional openness also shapes the way her brand functions. Her brand archetype is hero, not a dominant or warrior-like hero, a developing hero. Her identity revolves around self-expression, emotional freedom, rebellion through individuality, self-definition, and evolution. She represents the journey of becoming yourself publicly. However, Ayra's greatest strength is also tied to her biggest challenge because her creativity often moves faster than the structure around her. This is why people sometimes criticize her for inconsistent rollouts, lack of cohesion between eras, unfinished execution, branding loopholes. But I honestly do not think the issue is vision. I think the issue is alignment. It feels like Ayra's mind moves faster than her team can fully catch up to, and sometimes they do not completely understand the weight of the star she actually carries. Her ideas evolve quickly, but the packaging around those ideas sometimes struggles to keep pace. Unlike Tyla, whose strength comes from precision and containment, Ayra's power becomes strongest when she leans further into openness and atmosphere. Ayra also carries strong mystic elements, and that may actually be her deepest superpower. She already refers to herself as a celestial being, and even her name, Ayra Starr, naturally evokes something cosmic, dreamy, otherworldly. Her power is not just in emotional openness, but in her ability to turn introspection into atmosphere and experience. She becomes strongest when she leans deeper into that mystical identity instead of trying to appear overly polished or fully explained. The more she embraces her dreamy, spiritual, introspective side, the more distinct her artistry becomes. And because her identity is already built around evolution, trying to over-control her image will probably hurt her more than help her. The solution for Ayra is transparency. She benefits from taking fans into the process, showing creative evolution, explaining transitions between eras, revealing thought processes, allowing fans to witness the becoming instead of hiding it. Her fans should feel like they are walking through the journey with her in real time. That openness will not weaken her mystique, it will actually deepen emotional investment while helping her team better understand and execute her vision as it evolves. If everyone around her can move at the speed of her mind, execution becomes far less difficult. Because unlike Tyla, whose power comes from polished control, Ayra's power comes from emotional openness, mysticism, and movement. Physically, Ayra exists as girl next door plus muse. The girl next door gives relatability, emotional openness, and youthful familiarity, while the muse gives dreaminess, artistic ambiguity, and emotional projection. Together, she feels expressive, fluid, and emotionally alive. Ayra is femininity as transformation. At this point, the core difference between them becomes much easier to see. The reason people compare Tyla and Ayra Starr is because their surface aesthetics occasionally overlap, but underneath those visuals, they represent completely different emotional systems. Tyla represents femininity as arrival, Ayra represents femininity as becoming. Tyla is controlled femininity, and Ayra is evolving femininity. Tyla is identity as architecture and structure, while Ayra is identity as an experience. And Tyla builds image through precision, while Ayra builds image through emotional evolution. Neither approach is wrong, they are simply different. And once you understand that, the comparison itself stops becoming about competition, because you realize you are not looking at two versions of the same woman. You are looking at two completely different languages of modern femininity trying to exist in the same global pop space at the same time. And honestly, that difference is what makes both of them interesting. I'm Rosalia, and thanks for watching my video. I'll be posting more videos on feminine and personal branding, so if you have any suggestions on the next video essay, please let me know in the comment section. Talk to you later.